Hey everyone, Erin from Morehouse Farm here, and today I'm going to demonstrate turning the heel on Magic Loop. Now, if you're knitting along with us in our sock knit along, and you've been using the traveling method to avoid the jog in the stripes, you're gonna notice that when you get back to the beginning of your round, which is really where you started and ended, you are going to not have the next color completed because of where you were moving those stitches along. That's okay because you're going to finish that up as you start the heel. Now, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that wherever our round ended, that ends up being the back of our heel. So we'll need to reposition the stitches so that we're looking more like this. In order to do the heel across the back here where the rounds begin and end so that we have our stripes changing at the back where nobody's going to see them. So in order to do that, and this is why this is great on Magic Loop, we are just going to reposition the stitches. It gets a little trickier with two, so if you need to take them off, go right ahead and just put them back on once you flatten them out again. So I'll show you first rearranging with them on the needles, and then I'll take them off and show you how to put them back on. Okay, so when you have just one, right, you can pull it down so you see the entire circle there, and because we want to end up with this part here on one side and this part here on the other, the stitches are going to need to be separated that way. So pull a cord out through the side and pull a cord out through the other side. And there you have it. When I pull my shafts down, I'm ready to continue knitting across for the heel, and I've got all of those stitches on one side, okay? Now, I'm gonna do something that's gonna make you nervous. It's okay. This is why we love Morehouse Merino. It's not going anywhere, and even if you miss a stitch, you know how to pick them back up because you've been knitting along with us. So, here's where it was positioned on my needles. I'm going to turn it and flatten it, so I've got about half and half, and then I'm going to pick those stitches back up. See, none of them have gone anywhere. I haven't tugged on my yarn, so nothing's had a chance to run out. Okay, so here's one side. Then I would do the same for the front of the other sock, around the back of the other sock, and then pick this one up. And I'm gonna try and do this with my left hand. That may or may not work so well. You can certainly turn it around if that would be easier, but all I'm trying to do is pick up the stitches, being careful that I don't split the yarn. Move my working yarn out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. And voila, they've been repositioned. Now, just like with any Magic Loop project, I need to get my points together, pointing right, pull the back one out, and I'm ready to go. But you will notice that I've knit across here already, so my working yarn is in the middle. That just means I need to slide a few stitches over so that I'm on the point. I've got the right needle has all of the stitches I've already worked, and the left needle has the ones I need to work so far. So I'm going to work across here. Then I'm going to turn and purl back. If you were doing a second sock, knit across, then turn and purl back on the second one first, and then come back to this one. You'll be slipping the first stitch, and then you'll be purling across. The slip stitch helps one make it easier to see later on, and you'll notice I'm just giving the green yarn a tug to keep things nice and snug. The last stitch where it was starting to get a bit loose. And you'll notice also that I am purling, quote, backwards from probably the way you were taught. All that does is makes the stitch sit on the needle in a different orientation with the right leg to the back rather than to the front. So I am not knitting through the back loop in the sense that you might have learned. I am not twisting my stitches. And the reason I know that is because when I put the needle in the hole, it's gonna knit a flat stitch. And the reason I knit that way is a couple. One, from my wrist injury, or when I purl that way is because of my wrist injury. It's a lot more comfortable. Two, it's a lot faster for me than traditional continental purling. And three, it actually makes my stitches a whole lot more even because the purl stitch tends to be a lot looser for a lot of knitters, and for me that's just one great way that I have figured out how to make them even more even with my stockinette stitches. Okay, so across there, now I'm going to turn again, come back and purl. And you can do this either way, picking, throwing. The only one that's a little bit trickier, but you can do lever knitting with circular needles. So excited, I just got a knitting belt. And thank you, Beth, for the double pointed needles, the long ones. So I'm gonna give that a try soon. Especially with our shawl knit along coming up. So here I go again, slip, knit across. Aren't you glad I did a little sock so you don't have to watch me doing the whole thing? Okay, now to abbreviate this, when you get to the point where the instructions say, pull out a little more yarn here. Oh, great tip, by the way, I learned it from Stephanie Pearl McPhee. Pull out a couple of yards of yarn from your ball at a time. Seems like it might get things tangled, but in actuality, it's gonna help you have a looser tension, because when you're tugging against a ball of yarn, that's what's creating extra drag, and that's why if you're a tight knitter, you may be contributing to that. That was definitely my case when I was learning to lever knit. And once I started pulling the yarn out of the ball ahead of time, oh, what a difference it made. Okay, so coming to the end here, what we're gonna start to do in order to turn the heel is we're gonna be knitting two together. Right now for me, because of the way my purl stitches lean, it looks that way. For you guys, right, it's gonna go this way. When you're positioning your stitches that way. All I'm gonna do is keep knitting across here though. And do the same with the last two stitches when I get there. And I will show you one more round of this, slipping here. And again, you're following the pattern instructions exactly where and with how many stitches you're working on. I'm just showing the general idea. Some like to have you knit two together at the beginning, some like to have you purl two together at the end. But the whole idea is that you're shrinking the size of the sock heel panel, and that by doing that, you are pulling not only the stitches in, but you're causing them to turn at the same time. Let's see, I'm going to be consistent here and only do the purls. Some will also have you do it every other row. So we're going to purl two together here maybe at the beginning. It doesn't matter, follow your pattern. And the whole idea of the decreases is that they're consistent along the way, but you can do any one of them. So if you're feeling adventurous and do your own sock designing, that might be something you think about. But what you can see here is that we've started with this decrease, and now I've got an extra length in the middle, which when I come back along and pick up stitches here, we're going to have that triangle in the center. And I've got a demo of it here. All right, we'll pick up some stitches along this side as soon as it's the right length. And even commercially knit socks are done that way. Here's one of my wool socks from Costco. It's dark, so it's harder to see, but you can, when you're up close, notice the knitting comes down this way. And then, oh look, knit two together to turn the heel and pick them back up. Happy knitting, everyone.